Have you ever been in that situations where you know you were successful, though success suddenly no longer feels the same? If yes, you are in the right place and you are listening to the right podcast. Welcome to Leadership in Transition podcast, a podcast dedicated to discuss times and situations of transitions at work and in life and how to address them. Today we will talk about success and how success may sometimes shift and change. To discuss that important topic today, I have the honor to be joined by Pietro Mingotti, founder of Transhuman Coaching. He's also a self-made business leader for many years. Pietro, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Hi Laurent, thank you very much for having me in your show. This is great.
I'm so glad to be here with you. So maybe to start off with, is there a few words you would like to share with our listeners about you and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. I am Pietro Mingotti. I am a professional mental coach based in Italy. I am specialized more in life coaching and in specific intimacy coaching, relationship coaching and sexuality coaching. And as you said, it's interesting because I didn't always do this job. I actually started founding a marketing technology company when I was 21. And, that is really aligned with the topic that we're discussing today because I reached success and then at some point I needed something different. I needed to do something different with my life, and that's where I started to prepare myself to be a coach. And that's why, as a coach, I stay away from business because I have been there a long time.
Great to hear. So maybe to start with, I'm wondering, the clients you see and the people you work with in your practice, when someone has built success, a successful career or successful business, maybe just like you, they come to you and maybe they feel like something has changed, something is no longer the same. Mm-hmm. So how do they usually describe that? How does that come up in them? What do they come up with? What is the problem that they come to you with?
Well, it's really hard to grasp for most people with every issue, challenge, life shift we have. It's always very difficult to really pin down what the actual issue is. So normally a coachee, when they come to the first consultancy, they tend to describe a moment in their life where they are a little bit at loss. Maybe everything is functioning as it's supposed to some degree, but they don't feel. The one thing common that I see is not feeling pleasure in a way, satisfaction, a sense of wholeness, and maybe used to be there in the past and then got lost some way along the tracks. So this is true for students who get very high marks and they feel like, well, that's just what's expected and there's nothing special in that. It happens with business people such as me. I founded this company and then at some point I was like, yeah, okay, I reached my goal. And now, what does this mean for my life? Am I done? Is this goal as important as it was 10 years ago when I started? And so on. And it happens also in sex life because sometimes people, everything is functioning as it's supposed to. They have a relationship, everything is supposed to be okay. But I still feel there's something lacking. I still feel there's something not really working. So yeah, success is not always aligned with feeling successful.
Yeah, this is great. And what I'm hearing, this is not a crisis. This is not something that just suddenly comes and say, hey, there's a problem here. Mm-hmm. There's subtle things that changes or feelings, emotions, or things that suddenly sort of come, right?
Yeah, I think it's really personal. To some people, they can develop into a sense of crisis. And the sense of crisis is exactly given by not being able to pin down what's what. And to some other people, they can't define that there is a sense of crisis, but there is a big question mark in a way. So that's how I see it the most in my practice.
Is it fulfillment also, like no longer feeling fulfilled in terms of what we do? That feeling, is it sufficient or there's something lacking?
Well, it often happens, but as I said, the awareness of this description that you're giving, which is very accurate, but the biggest issue is often having awareness of that. Because when you have awareness, you can work on a goal to, change your situation. It's when you're feeling stuck and you don't really know what's wrong that normally people come to a coach, in my experience. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes. And how do you work with your client in this? So if they come to you and I don't know, I don't feel successful anymore, things have changed and all that, how do you approach it to start up with, to start maybe to build that awareness? Because yes, awareness is important, and with awareness we can take actions. So how do you start? How does that show up?
Well, my own method, my salsa and how I do coaching in a way is a balance of two dynamics that seem, they can look as opposite or far away, but they truly both compose the human life experience. So one take that I use a lot with my clients is explaining the neurobiology of goal setting and what goals mean to us and how dopamine works and how all of these neurotransmitters that lead our sense of satisfaction work, because understanding the biology of your life is really important. Otherwise, you're trying to walk a warfield blindfolded if you don't know why you feel a certain way and so on. And then the other side, which is part of my education as a coach, I studied at the 3-dimensional coaching academy, and that method sees the human experience as composed by 3 pillars, so to say, 3 dimensions. And the thing is, that sense of satisfaction, that sense of wholeness, that sense of, okay, yeah, I'm where I'm supposed to be and everything is going the right direction, it can be achieved when all the 3 dimensions are aligned. And these dimensions are what you do, dimension 1, what you think and feel, dimension 2, and who you are, dimension 3. So being. We live in an age in which we are a lot in dimension 1. We do, and we think about doing and getting and having and right. And when this is not aligned to how you think and feel already, that creates the stress, right? So let's say that you think and feel that you love animals and nature and you want to protect it, but you are a hunter. That already creates a problem, right? But then there is also who you are as a person. What are your values? What leads you? What motivates you? What makes the unique cocktail of values, feelings, and such that makes you you? And unfortunately, we lose touch a lot with this 3rd dimension in these modern ages we live. And so that's how I work with my clients. I start from the base. Let's see if you know what your values are. Who are you? Are you able to define who are you? And then we move towards how you think in terms of everything you've achieved, where you are in your life, what do you think about what is success to you, right? Because success is really different for everybody.
I was gonna ask then, what is success?
Success is what you define, you and your cultural background, your psychology, your own success grammar is yours and yours only. So I can make an example starting from me again. No, right? I'm kind of your coachee today. And so when I was 21 and I just finished university, my sense of success was I have to have a job that makes me a lot of money, and I have to be able to be independent and sustain my family. This is the absolute success. This is the goal. And I reached that goal. And then, oh fuck. Oh, sorry, is this a G-rated vlog? This is another...
No longer.
This is another thing of my style of coaching. I am not G-rated. So, yeah, because we say that, we say fuck. We say, I thought I had everything. I'm where I'm supposed to be, but where's the pleasure? Where's the calmness? Where's the pot at the end of the rainbow? Right? And this is the thing. From a neurobiological standpoint, we know that our sense of success, our sense of goal, it's all biochemical reaction, right? So clearly it's set by your mind in a moment of your life where you need certain certainties, you need to feel good about yourself in a certain way. But then as you grow, the definition of success changes. And we can see this also if we move in different demographic cohorts, say in a country like United States, if you live in uptown Manhattan, then your idea of success is going to be very different.
Of course.
Compared if you are a farmer in Louisiana, and maybe your idea of life success is making your grandfather's ranch even better and bigger. Well, we don't have a lot of ranches in Louisiana, maybe. Sorry, Louisiana people, but it was to point out an example and make it a little bit easier to understand. The problem with success is that you define what your success is. And sometimes maybe we tend to always raise the bar far away from where we are.
And how do you see expectations of success? Because you say, yeah, we define success, true, but often in society today, there's a lot of, not pressure maybe, but expectation of what success looks like. So how does that differentiate between reconnecting or being aligned with what we want as success and finding the ability to remove the expectations of society, parents, or whatever else around us that maybe say, well, success is this, and we feel that we'd like to be successful and that's the success we think we want?
Well, you said it. It's about validation and where that validation comes from. And the tricky part is that in expecting external validation, we set the ground for a constant sense of dread, that pressure that you're talking about. But then if we become some nirvana saint, right? And we think, oh no, I'm the only person who has to validate. I'm the only person who has a right of voting about my life, which is all correct, right? As coaches, we help people get closer to that mindset. But that has a cost though, because thinking about external validation also creates the illusion that somebody cares about you. And that illusion is very comfortable. Because when you become self-sufficient and you self-validate, you self-actualize your life, it kind of feels like a lonely experience, no? If you don't have to prove to somebody else any longer your worth, does your own sense of giving yourself worth, is that enough? Does it feel pleasurable? And that's where we actually start the thick part of the work. The nice part of working with my coaches is where we reach these points. Because this is where it's very generative. This is where things can really change.
Yeah, and this is where success, one has the ability to define it himself. What is their success and not what we think potentially others would want us to be successful as. So let me ask you, Pietro, so how do you see misalignment in people? Like for our listeners, if they listen and they're in the situations where they are successful, they build a successful career, life, and everything is fine, but suddenly things are no longer exactly as they are. In your experience, how does that show, and how can someone identify or find something useful in terms of, okay, there's something going on here, maybe I need to work on that, or there's things that they can do?
Well, I could summarize what I hear the most as my life feels on autopilot. Yes, everything is working a certain... So let me take a step back. Normally there are two cohorts. People who are technically successful but feel kind of anesthetized and empty or at loss. And then people who don't feel successful actually at all, and they are unhappy with their career path, where things are going. So I would say these are two different issues linked together by the same sense of purpose. And we will come back to purpose in a little. But so how can the listener identify? Well, if you feel that regardless of the way better than average results you have in terms of your livelihood, your career, your relationship, whatever it is, let's say you have a partner, you have a house, you can provide food to yourself, you can provide entertainment to yourself, you have 2 subscriptions, one to Disney Plus, one to Netflix, you have all of these things, right? But you don't feel passion for life at some point. You feel that pleasure, that sense of, I feel comfortable in my life. I like my life. I enjoy my life. I want to I want to enjoy all that I've built, and this is so great. So if you feel in this gamut, let's say, of feelings, maybe there is a misalignment, or you're not in touch, which is not necessarily the same thing, with, again, what defines you in terms of who I am, my values, my purpose, ultimately. On the other hand, if instead you are unhappy with your career, you are unhappy with your relationship, you are unhappy with your livelihood, or your body, or your sexuality, then it's a little bit more intricate and depends on the single person, because they might actually be successful and have success, but it's not what they want. Mm-hmm. And in another case, instead, there's a specific area where to change things and work on. A very quick example would be all of the married men who have a family and have kids, but they didn't want to be married men with a family and kids. But they did it because this is what society expects from you.
Was the family was expecting of friends or society?
Yeah, society, exactly. Family, friends, advertisement, everything. Yeah. This is what you have to do.
You mentioned the word purpose. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can spend a little bit of time on that, because yes, it's important to have a purpose. But I find, even me in my practice, when you speak to clients and to people, what is your purpose? What is your life purpose? Often there's a big question mark on their face, right? So how does one come? We all have purpose. It's, I believe, being connected to it and actually thinking about it and reconnecting to what our purpose is and what feels like something that we want. So how do you work? How do you help people finding a purpose? Or how do we come up with it? How do we become aware of our purpose?
Well, again, having said that we belong and we are composed, the way I see it, in these 3 dimensions, it doesn't end there. Something else that makes you unique, that makes you are your talents and your predispositions and what you are good at naturally. And that's the next step normally in the coaching work we do with my clients. Now we have, after a few sessions, we have a clearer framework of the value system, what motivates you, what drives you, what is unacceptable to you, what makes you mad and angry, right? Okay, now we have a clearer sense about who we are in terms of direction, but what do we love to do? What are we good at? What comes natural? In my case, it was helping people, being available to people, seeing that I could be of use for them to grow stronger and, the version of themselves they want. Yeah. So that's my talent. And I decided to invest in a career that allows me to do this, to shine for who I want to be. And this is where purpose is defined in a way that is aligned with who you are and your values and your feelings. But often, because we depend on external validation, our sense of purpose sometimes is defined by what we think is acceptable, what we think is wanted, what we are supposed to be. But unfortunately, at some point in life, it could be in your 20s or in your 60s, you start to realize that you've invested a lot of time in being somebody else in a way. And so redefining your purpose comes from that realignment with who you are and not seeking external validation, but your own validation.
So how do you see purpose in a way linking to success? Because I'm seeing that when you are on purpose, I find like everything is aligned. Your purpose, who you are, what you want to do, what you want to achieve. So how does that help define success in a way? Or how does that purpose help to have an alignment with success?
But because success doesn't exist. Success is an illusion. Success is a biochemical reaction that has to do with the reward system of your brain. And the reward system on your brain can work only if the mind and its biology are aligned together. And since who you are and what motivates you and what are your talents all comes from your mind, it can go on just so long before you start realizing that, no, I need time for myself. I want to build who I am, actually. And this awareness needs a little bit of help to be found sometimes. That's why, as we started, coaches arrive to us and they don't know what's wrong. They can't tell immediately what's wrong. But when you realize, hey, I am living a life that is not actually what I crave, what I want, that's the reward system. That's a healthy dopamine stream. You have to align your crave and your reward system to what actually is aligned with your mind system, right? So what your mind wants to be.
Can you explain, maybe for our listeners, not everybody may be so well aware, neuroscience, chemical dopamine, we've all heard it, yes, but maybe to help in terms of, again, we talk about success, purpose linked to it, then how does that actually come into the play for us to, as you say, success is an illusion. We create what success is, yes, at the end of the day we define what success is, nobody else does. So how does that all come together, and how does that work, and how can we help ourselves also in that?
Absolutely. Well, knowing all of the neurotransmitters is not interesting just from a notionally point of view. It's just that, so let's start from this. The basic aim of neuroscience is not to de-romanticize life. So it's not to say, when I say success is an illusion, I don't mean it in a dreadful way where then everything is an illusion and what are we living for and so forth. We need to have the balance to when to remember the knowledge of neurobiochemistry and when to forget about it. So when these are good feelings, everything is working right, we don't need to think about how it biologically works. But when we are stumbling on some issues, it's really useful to think about the neurobiology, because our psychology is not always agreeing with our need to fix things. And so it can be really difficult to move the needle of how we feel. But if in these cases we use the knowledge of how these chemicals work, then we have an edge, and then we have a competitive edge. So how can I make it because this is not a biology class. So, but I'll try. I'll try. So let's start from this. Let's say that our brain is divided. We could divide it in three main areas. There is the prefrontal cortex, where all of your active thinking, your elaboration of thought, where you are, as also your value systems and so forth. And there is the limbic area where emotion lives. And these two parts are not always really agreeing, so to say. And then we have the brainstem, where we, the automatic machine of breathing, heartbeat, self-regulation, and all of that. Okay, so dopamine, I mentioned dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that regulates your reward system. So motivation, desire, and pleasure. Well, pleasure comes from actually a cascade of other neurotransmitters, but this is the sequence. And so dopamine is released before a pleasureful thing happens. So because I like pizza, my crave for pizza, that's dopamine. And the motivation I feel to lift the phone and call the pizza place to have it delivered, that's dopamine. The anticipation of the pizza coming, that's dopamine. Opening the pizza box and smelling in the steam that comes out, that's dopamine. But then it starts to fade, and it gives access to other neurotransmitters, because the role of dopamine is to get you there. So it's the motivation hormone, it's not the pleasure hormone. And you have serotonin, you have adrenaline, of course, you have noradrenaline, you have cortisol, you have other kind of endorphins, you have GABA, which is the main inhibitory neurotransmitter of our system. So it's the relaxation one. It's where we are able to reduce neural activity. There are so many. I wrote a blog post on my website where these are explained in great detail. And so when I work with a coachee, I try to explain them how they work, because they can be routed Like, thanks to the neuroplasticity of our neural system, it's sometimes dopamine is activated, its release is activated by disadvantageous situation. Let's take an example. If you are a smoker, you know, I am a smoker, and the reason why I keep purchasing tobacco and keep rolling and keep lighting it up is dopamine. Because my brain is trained to associate dopamine release with this action, with this other chemical, nicotine, right? And this happens with everything though. And the reward system is linked to dopamine. So if we train our association with pleasure, with something that is aligned with our goals, that is aligned with what we want to change, that is aligned with, as an example, moving the needle from I need external validation to I need to take pleasure from my own validation, in the course of weeks of work, you can retrain how your brain releases said neurotransmitters, and things become easier, things become pleasurable. You can feel again pleasure from the success, the purpose, and all of this.
Yeah. No, great. Very interesting. I hope we haven't lost our listeners in the very technical of neuroscience, but this is really, really, no. This is really, really good. And I love this also because that just explains a lot of what we hear, but also I love the neuroplasticity because my coaching, I tend to do a lot with also embodiment because yes, brain and body needs to be aligned, and often what we experience shows up in the body before the brain has even made sense of what would happen in the body. And that's what I found also works a lot in terms of my coaching, also in gaining awareness of what happens in your body, because you know when you align with what you do and you know when you don't. We just need to reconnect to the signals that our body are sending us, which often I find clients we have lost the ability to do it. We don't listen to our body. We are very brain focused. So I love what you say, because the brain cannot help a lot also, but the body also is a source of wisdom that obviously links to the brain. So everything is just one.
It goes even beyond, because we have this conception that we are walking brains, like there is a division between the brain and the body, but that's absolutely not true. Your body is your brain and is you. You know, we think when we are not very familiar with the neural system, we think that the brain is where we are, and then the body is used to move, to eat, to digest. But no, the neural system stems from the brain, goes through the spine, and through the spine goes to every single microscopic inch of every part of your body. And it's all connected together. Think just about the gut, the brain in your intestine, that's how they call it, because it's the second part of your body with most neurons, absolutely. So absolutely, the body speaks when you don't listen to your mind, 100%.
Yeah. I'm wondering, and maybe we might shift a little bit in terms of the workplace and leadership and leaders. So how does having a well-defined success internally for ourselves can help and change how someone would lead others in the workplace or in life even, and show up as a leader? So how do you see that sort of showing up?
First of all, we have to, again, as usual, make a step back and ask ourselves, did we ever want to be a leader?
Of course, yeah.
Because you're right, because as we know, this all stems from here. So let's assume you want to be a leader. In my experience, the best leaders are people who grow into be a leader, and people who wanted to be a leader since always. Well, where is that motivation coming from? What do you want to achieve with being a leader? Does it has to do with validation from outside? Do you want to be the boss? Or is it about helping people?
The why. Why do you want to be a leader?
The deep why. Yeah. So, okay, let's skip this part. You listeners, you know who you are, and there are ramifications about what brought you there that really change what we're about to say. But let's skip for now the motivation. Let's say you are a leader and you enjoy being a leader. So, the thing is, when you learn to self-validate, right, to work on yourself and not base the validation on others, and realign with your deep why, and you feel you're doing what you're supposed to do because you chose it, because you feel connected to it, then you become a better leader for a number of reasons. The first one is that you're not stressed any longer by imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome fuels on the idea that others are looking at you and that they expect you to be good at something, and you truly know this is not really true. And you can come away with it most times because you're good at speaking, you're good at this, you're good at that, but deep down, we all know you are not good. So this comes from this misalignment and looking outside and then looking inside and looking outside and looking inside. And you're looking outside to try and validate your inside or unvalidate it. When you stop being concerned about, am I in the right place? So you have realigned with who you are, you know what you want to do, and then you don't worry about this and you start looking at outside, worrying, how can I help people better? No? Yeah. Which is what you're supposed to be doing as a leader. And as a cascade, as a domino effect, that affects everything about leadership. Another thing that is highly stressful for most leaders is KPI. You try to measure your own worth based on the outcome that your team is producing and so forth. And again, you're looking in the wrong place, because KPIs are for stakeholders and it's a financial, it's a far away. You're supposed to be working with people and make sure that each and one of them can shine the best, can give the best to the purpose that you all have together as a team. So again, it's a matter of where your eyes are going. Other ways in which being aligned with yourself make you better as a leader is that when you don't need to prove others your authority, and you embody authority because you are not checking any longer, you are sure about what you're doing and you feel comfortable in your role, people don't feel you as a threat. You become an inspiration. Authority that is not shouted, is not imposed, is not rigid, that's how actually people give you the authority you're seeking. If you have to constantly prove it because you have some imposter syndrome, because you feel every day you step at work you have to perform as a leader is expected to behave, again, all of these things shift your attention elsewhere from where your attention would actually make you shine.
I think it's really interesting how you talk about the embodiment and your self-awareness of knowing who you are, what you want, and how with that, then as we talk success, you can bring success in others. And obviously, if you take it in a workplace, success of others will be, as a leader, the success of the team, and hence the success of how you will deliver for a leader. So I love how you say authority, because I think we've all been in a job where you have a boss that is authoritarian, and actually I've experienced it myself. The best I've performed in my previous corporate roles were with leaders that did not need authority but were able to bring you along. And for me, that's true leadership, and that's how I've seen it myself. I performed much better instead of a boss that has that authority because he or she is not comfortable about themselves and who they are, and so they think that as a leader you have to have authority instead of bringing people along. So
when people learn how to live the workplace in a way that allows them to express the best of themselves, and they also learn self-regulation at work, not out of imposed rules and tough stuff, but by allowing them to shine for who they are at their best, then it's a virtuous circle where everybody works better and the company makes more money.
I call it human centricity.
Human centricity, that's great.
I posted a few things and I wrote a few things about human centricity. And if we all become human in that, then I think success will just come by default. You can't go wrong. So as we come slowly to the end of that podcast, maybe if we can let our listeners go away with one thing that they can do after having listened to that podcast, and what is the one or two things that maybe, Pietro, you would want to let them with, and what they can do to redefine success or reconnect to what success means for them, or whatever you think that would be useful for people.
So first of all, if you feel that you are in a moment of your life, as life goes in snapshots, it goes in moments. Maybe you were not feeling the way you're feeling up to 6 months ago. Or maybe right now everything is perfectly aligned and in 6 months it might not be the same, because it happens. So first of all, let's learn to stress less. Don't panic. Don't start wandering with your mind, bouncing on the corners of your mind, not finding answers, but start to listen to your body and to start to listen to your mind. Listen to what is happening to you with curiosity instead of judgment. Try to write down the things that come to your mind, and then it can be a good idea to get in touch with Laurent, who is a great coach, because first of all, he offers an introductory session, and you don't have to really engage into something even financially, but it can be great to share with another person the load and think with the help of a coach, because you get to the result much faster. This is the thing. The reason why writing on a piece of paper is really useful lays in what we said before about the structure of the brain. When you write something, or even better, you share it with another person, you are biologically forced to engage parts of your brain which have to do with actual change. If you only keep your thoughts in your mind, they stay there. It's really hard for a thought or a need or a feeling to evolve if you keep it all for yourself. So if you don't feel comfortable in sharing with a friend, with a member of your family, or even better, with a professional like Laurent, start writing, start journaling. Write it down, and you will see that the difference just by putting it on paper. The act of putting your feeling and your thought into physical reality already biochemically forces you to focus and zero in and feel less anxiety. Then try to follow this pattern. Try to define your core values. Are you able to do that? Are you able to remind yourself what motivates you because of who you are, and what are your talents and what are your true ambitions, right? If you can do it, you can start to realign by yourself. If you instead feel that you're still at loss, then it's really a good idea to have a few sessions with a coach, because that can really fuel and kickstart the path to get out of this situation. So this is what I would leave to your listeners. Don't panic. Use curiosity towards this new situation, because you will be out of it. It's an evolution moment. And then, if you can, don't feel shy or self-judgmental over investing a few hours of your time sharing with a professional like a coach. Because truly this is, until you try, you don't really know, but it truly helps in getting where you want to go.
Thank you, Pietro. I love the journaling. I also, often at the beginning with my clients, offer them to journal. And I sometimes say, if you can even do it on paper with a pen, this is even more powerful for the brain than typing it on a computer, because the brain, to move your hand and type letters, makes connection even greater to what you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at a journal back, and it allows for emotions and feelings to actually be out on paper, and it's no longer just within you. And there's also a separation you can make to what is written versus what is just staying in the brain. So I love the journal advice. That often starts with that, and that's often the first place to start with. So thank you, Pietro.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me in your show.
No, thank you for coming, and really appreciate the time. That was really insightful. I love your work as well in terms of what you do as a coach. I keep watching what you do, and so thank you for listening. And as we say, success is what we define it to be and what we choose it to be. So we can be in control, and we have the power to choose what success is and make it that actually fulfills our purpose and what we want to achieve in life. So thank you for listening. I leave you with these words and wish you a good rest of your day or whatever you are doing. Thank you.